Okay, I could not be more excited for our next conversation and speaker. Not only is she a revolutionary advocate for equality, but also a strong example on why it's so important to love ourselves for who we truly are. Let's take a look.
Jameela Jamil. A self-proclaimed feminist in progress, Jameela Jamil is not afraid to tell it like it is. The Good Place star shook up social media when she created the Instagram account Iway in 2015 with the goal to promote body positivity. What started out as an honest way to express her own struggles with self-love, it has flourished into a global movement that aims to empower diverse voices. A survivor of anorexia as a young girl, Jameela Jamil continues to create a safe space for everyone to learn, grow, and ultimately create positive change within their own communities around the world.
Hello and welcome to Elevate. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. I can't help but notice your epic background right now.
Oh yeah, I'm just in my garden. This is my house.
Oh, casual.
Obviously.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for gracing us and leaving your palace to hang out with us today. Really appreciate it. You know, why was it important for you to be a part of this? I have just been blown away the last couple days with everything that's been discussed, and the fact that today is all about well-being really resonates in my heart and my soul, and I think it's awesome that you're here. But I'm curious, why was this something that you wanted to be a part of?
Honestly, any opportunity to be able to talk about true wellness, not just the type that involves putting expensive things on top of your body and on top of your face, on your skin, but things that treat you from the inside out. It's something that I'm obsessed with talking about. And so knowing that you guys shared that obsession made me feel like this was a really good fit.
Yes, it's definitely a shared obsession, and the excitement for you being here is definitely palpable in this room. So we're really, really appreciative that you're here. And, you know, by doing a deep dive, creeping your platform, seeing what you do on social media, it seems like you've got a real sense of self-worth through all your different channels, whether it's activism or advocacy and just the type of content you put out into this world. But I'd like to go back in time with you a little bit, because I think a lot of people know you and celebrate you for everything you're doing now, but I'd love to go back in time and talk about the fact that you were a teacher before everything that you're doing now.
I was an English teacher. I was discovered at my local pub on a Friday where we would go to recover from being teachers. And I got discovered by a producer and asked to audition. And I did, and I got the job. And literally within about 2 weeks, I was hosting the biggest youth TV show in England. It was very surreal and extra weird for my students, I think.
I can only imagine. Was that a tough choice for you? Because sometimes life, you know, you're on a path, you've got a plan, you're doing what you're doing, and then life kind of throws you a little curveball. And you have the opportunity to say yes and take a chance and dive into the unknown, or you can stay where you are, which is totally cool too. But you took that chance. Was there any hesitation or reservations when you did that, or were you just ready for a new adventure?
Oh, there's always hesitations and reservations with everything that I do because, you know, I'm supremely underqualified for almost everything that I first try, and then I learn, and then I become good at it, and then I become qualified just on the job, which is quite stressful, but also incredibly fun. I just have always had a very palpable sense that life is very short. And, you know, my dad always used to say that, you know, what's the worst that can happen? They're not going to take you out and shoot you. And I think that was a really good way of looking at embarrassment. You know, it's just not that bad as you know, something that is transient. I don't know if that's the right word. It's probably not the right word, but it's something that can pass us by, and it's not permanent. And I think that I run towards embarrassment. I run towards failure. My curiosity is what drives me in life, of just like, oh, I wonder how badly this is going to go. and if it goes well, then great. And if not, then it makes for an amazing story for my friends who really enjoy my humiliations.
I love that you just run into life ready for embarrassment. Have you always been like this though? Like in high school, were you driven like this and curious and okay to experience failure and see the good in it?
Yeah, I think I've always been shy and bold at the same time. I think maybe it was the movies that I was watching, you know, I don't know what it was about my upbringing, but I just wanted to know what was going to happen. I I've always just, I've never seen failure as something bad. I've always seen failure as, you know, quite noble, in that you were willing to try when success wasn't guaranteed. And I think that we have quite a warped and sad view of failure now in this day and age. And I think it hinders people, especially women, you know, who are particularly fear-mongered about failure. Men are encouraged just to get up and dust themselves off, whereas women are told just to disappear into the nearest trash can and set themselves on fire if they're anything less than perfect. And so I think women in particular need to be encouraged to be willing to fail, because that's how you learn. Mistakes are how we make our greatest leaps forward in knowledge, you know, neuroscientifically. We have to be able to be vulnerable and open to finding out what exists in the periphery outside of just our path that we were told to stick to. We have so many more talents and gifts and ambitions than we even know about, because we've been told just to stay in our lane, and that's a very small lane. It's more of an alleyway. And so I think that I'm trying to just be a public example. Even before I was public, I just always wanted to be my own example, even, of someone who refused to be dictated to by should, and instead just did whatever I wanted.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You said shy and bold. I don't know where the shy is, but I'm certainly seeing the bold in you, and I welcome it. And hearing you talk about reframing failure into a positive is really wonderful, but I think it's quite challenging for a lot of people to adopt that mindset. And you mentioned especially women struggle with this, and I concur. I have so many incredible women in my life who are sometimes stunted by fear of failure. So do you have any advice for anyone listening who's like, I really want to do this thing, or I want to go after my dream job, or volunteer in my community, or get involved in social activism, but I'm just a little bit afraid of failure or rejection?
I can honestly say regret is the thing that we should fear the most in the world. That feels to me like the most lingering pain, is wondering, oh God, what if, what could have happened? I find those two words together to be the scariest combo in the English language, because I get haunted by opportunities that I didn't try. And I really want you to ask yourself, like, whose judgment are you afraid of? Is it your own? Is it other people? Are you around the right people? People who make you feel small for going and doing something really brave and cool, like trying something that maybe you weren't prepared for, or maybe you weren't ready for, or maybe you didn't even know if you were good at it or not. You should be around people who champion your madness. You know, I have people around me who champion the fact that I throw myself into things that I may globally humiliate myself in, but they're there for me and they're proud of me for trying. And I think we really have to build a love for trying. I think it's really sad that doesn't have greater value in our current society. Trying is so cool and noble, in my opinion.
And scary, and I think it's good to feel scared. It kind of reminds you you're alive. And something you mentioned was actually shared on this stage not too long ago. Julie Black took the stage, and she also mentioned how important it is, to have a strong support system around you. People who champion you, who call you out, but who, at the end of the day, have your back. And when you have a strong support system, especially, when we talk about well-being, it's really, really important. And it sounds like it's had a big impact in your life, and it's something that you consciously kind of take note of.
Yes, I really do. I'm quite ruthless when it comes to my personal circle. I will cut anyone off, even if I'm related to them, if I find them to be toxic to my existence. And I always invite people to change their toxic behaviors in order to make sure that we're both comfortable in the relationship. And if they don't want to do it, then they just have to go. I don't really believe in sacrificing my well-being or feeling of peace for someone else's toxicity that they're refusing to address and change. They need to go to therapy. They need to go and take control of their own lives. That's not my problem. And as a woman, you're taught that everything is your problem and everything is your responsibility and everyone is your responsibility. And it's hugely liberating to realize that they're not. I am my priority, and that's okay. And it feels quite shocking for a woman to say something like that, for a woman to be openly selfish. But because of being openly selfish, I'm now alive and happy. And I wouldn't be here if I was continuing. There's something amazing that my therapist said the first time I met her was, a doormat is already lying down before people wipe their feet all over it. And that was such a profoundly important thing for me to hear. It was a bit victim shaming, but it was very important for me to hear, because it's true. I was allowing a lot of bad people into my life, and we have to take some responsibility for our own boundaries. And I don't mean that in a shaming way, I mean that in an empowering way. You have the right, you reserve the right to dictate your circle, and you should do everything in your power to make it as safe and joyous as possible, because the world is just hard enough, frankly.
Yeah, take back some of that power. And sometimes getting rid of toxic people can be very difficult. But it's so important, especially if
so worth it.
Yeah, in the long term. And like you said, it's all about choosing to prioritize yourself. And self-care is not selfish. It might seem selfish because you're saying no to things, you're carving out time, you're creating boundaries, you're maybe cutting out toxic people. But at the end of the day, you get to show up in your life happier, healthier, in a better headspace. And that has unbelievable ripple effects into every room that you walk into. And yeah, self-care is not selfish. It's like the kindest thing you can do to people in your life. Yeah.
It's self-preservation. And with self-preservation, we are able to help more people for longer, because it's just not sustainable continuing to just sort of bleed out all of your resources constantly for everyone else and never saving anything for yourself.
Yeah. And also, thank you for saying that you go to therapy. I also go to therapy. It has been very helpful in my life. And strongly suggest that for anyone who's struggling, reach out, find resources within your community, because it might have a really awesome benefit to your mental well-being.
Agreed.
All right, so in 26, you kind of hit a big first. You went from being a teacher, getting found in a pub, and then you hosted that show, and then at 26-year-old, you kind of hit a big first milestone, and your life really transitioned into the public eye. What was that transition period like? Because it's one thing to live your life, behind closed doors, you're with your friends and family, but then all of a sudden thrown into the public eye, it sometimes can change things and have an impact.
I'd say I probably became thrown into the public eye around 23. It was almost as soon as I started on television, so it was a very rude awakening. And I was so afraid that I was going to get fired that I kept my teaching job for like 8 months into my television job. So Monday to Friday, I was in a classroom having students roll their eyes at me, and then on Saturday morning I was live to the entire nation, living this incredibly glamorous second life basically, and so it was very, very peculiar. At 26, I got an even bigger job where I made history as the first woman to host the BBC official chart, which is kind of like America's Hot 100 live. In 60 years on air, they'd never had a woman host it solo. And so that became me. And that was a huge moment. It was such an iconic flagship show. And it just put me into a new level of fame that felt increasingly suffocating, because I didn't know I was mentally ill because there was very little information, least of all in the United Kingdom, about what a mentally ill person is. Hollywood has a lot to answer for in the fact that they only ever portrayed mental illness as a murderer with paranoid schizophrenia. We just really didn't see any kind of nuance or different shades of the spectrum of mental illness. So it was hard for me. There was certainly no public discourse. We didn't really have social media back then. So I had no idea that I was mentally ill. I thought I was just, I don't know. I don't even know what I thought. I think I wasn't introspective at all. And so I was a deeply mentally ill person who was now extremely famous, with paparazzi outside my front door, so I couldn't go for a walk when I was sad or having a panic attack. I had no space. There were cameras flashing in my face. Late at night, there were people calling me abusive terms. The paparazzi would call me abusive terms in an attempt to get a rise out of me, so that they'd get the picture of me attacking them or throwing their camera on the floor, which thankfully I never did. And you get hounded, and everywhere you go, people are listening in on your conversations and writing in your conversations into the newspapers. So it was a was a very, very odd time. Now, obviously, I just want to be very clear that with all of that came an immense amount of privilege, and the fact that I even had a roof over my head and somewhere to hide and a great job is something that I'm truly grateful for. But I do think it's important to talk about the flip side of fame, not because I need a moan, but because I think there's so much importance put upon fame, and so many young people encouraged to just aim everything they've got towards becoming TikTok famous or Instagram famous. They have this fantasy of what that life is like, and actually it's important that we break that down, because it can be quite a lonely and harrowing experience, one that I've worked very hard the second time around of becoming famous to change and make sure is more of a wholesome, grounded experience. But I really want young people to know that it's not very safe for your mental health. So you really have to go into it with your eyes open and with a very, very strong support system, because, it's a snake pit.
A snake pit. I'm sure that's not what, any individuals wanting to become TikTok famous or IG famous are thinking of when they want to go for it. But we need to have these conversations, and your experience when you were in your 20s sounds horrible and lonely and scary. And no one should have to go through that, especially, you mentioned you were struggling with mental illness. So what was the turning point for you where you took your mental well-being really seriously and became proactive about it?
Well, trigger warning, a mention of suicide, but I tried to kill myself when I was 26, end of 26. And so I think that was a kind of big wake-up call where I realized that after I failed at it, I only wanted to do it again. So I just thought, well, either I'm going to do it again and it'll all be over, or I could just do everything in my power and just kind of set myself on this kind of experiment to see if I could save my own life, if I could change everything about my life. And that's where my kind of ruthlessness comes from, and my self-preservation comes from, is that's what it took to be able to continue to exist. And I went and sought that therapist who told me to stop being a doormat. And I cut a bunch of people out, family members, old friends, people whose behavior I found hugely unacceptable that had helped lead to that feeling of hopelessness. I became more careful I kind of stepped out of the public eye. I moved to America with the hopes of never being on television or famous again. And then I ran out of money. And so I had to try television again. And I got sort of heavily coerced into trying out acting. And I went to the Good Place audition. And that was my first kind of comedy audition. And I got it.
Wow. So. And it sounds like when you talk about, being quote unquote famous, it sounds like it's almost, you look at it in chapters. There's chapter one, which you experienced, in your 20s, and it was a dark experience, it sounds like.
It was a clusterfuck.
It was a clusterfuck. This chapter, what's the title of it? If chapter one is clusterfuck, what's chapter two?
Chapter two is in progress, is what I would say. I'm still learning. I'm still working out how to handle it. I'm much more famous this time around because it's on more of a global sphere, which I didn't ever see coming. I never planned on any of this. I really just wanted to be an English teacher. And I was lured by my deep and terrifying curiosity into an industry that I definitely probably wasn't built for. But now that I'm here, I'm doing everything I can to kind of serve the 12-year-old me who didn't have someone to make her feel like it's okay to feel all the things she's feeling. I'm not famous to become friends with other famous people, because some of them are quite unbearable. But I am definitely sticking around and utilizing this for as long as I can stand it to make sure that I can represent the people who didn't feel represented. So whether that's South Asian kids or kids with invisible disabilities or kids with mental health struggles or eating disorders, I'm here just to make you realize that you cannot possibly mess up your life more than I already have. I've already done it for you. So now you can just learn from my mistakes and you can feel less alone, and we can just admit that we fucked some of this up together. And I feel like we need more role models like that, because this glorification, deification, and perfectionism of celebrities, not just in the way they look, but the way that they behave, and the fact that they don't they're not vulnerable. They don't speak out on any important issues because they're worried they'll get it wrong, and I do understand that. But they just kind of live like gods. Celebrity has overtaken religion, I think, as the kind of mass system of worship. And I think that that's unfortunate, because I grew up with role models like that, and it made me feel really alienated and bad about myself.
And you're here changing that. Honestly, conversations like this are going to make a difference. I'm curious, what do you think the 12-year-old you would say to you now, seeing what you have gone through, what you've overcome, and how you're using your voice?
She'd say that I shouldn't have joined Twitter. That's what she would say. She'd say I shouldn't have joined Twitter, but other than that, she'd say, thank you for remembering her and for remembering everything she went through and for not pretending to be someone else.
Yeah. It's hard. It's so hard to be authentically yourself, especially in today's day and age, but it's so important. It's so important to the way we view ourselves, our self-worth, our value.
People fight me on it so much. People find it so unacceptable that I'm so comfortable with being myself. It's really funny to me. People don't like the fact that I make mistakes and then apologize and stick around. They think I should leave and go to some sort of liberal jail that we like to throw each other into. They don't like the fact that I am excited to learn and that I like learning with other people. They don't like the fact that I do my learning publicly and that I don't profess to be some sort of, genius, intellectual icon. They don't like how comfortable I am with my flaws or how outspoken I am, and the fact that I don't stay in my lane, and the fact that I keep treading into new areas and trying things. And I just don't care. It's just not my job to be liked or believed or understood or approved of by truly anyone. And learning that in my 30s has been the most liberating realization of my life, because I think I spent a lot of time in my life trying to make myself smaller for other people's insecurities, and now I just think that's boring and like an ungrateful waste of life. I'm just going to do everything and try everything and be vulnerable, and everyone's just going to have to either mute me or get over it.
I'm also in my 30s and love it so much more than my 20s. So much more, which is awesome. We kind of spoke on this, but I'd love to dive a little deeper into this idea of value and validation. And I'm guilty of this. It feels like, especially women, we live in a society where we seek validation, and then somehow that's a reflection of our inner value. And it should be the opposite. Like, we should value ourselves, and validation's just the cherry on top, but it really doesn't freaking matter at the end of the day. And yet, it's a real thing. It's a real struggle daily, especially with social media. We post things, and if it doesn't get a certain amount of likes, maybe that affects our inner self-worth. We walk into a room, if not enough people acknowledge us or say hi, we feel bad about ourselves. We make ourselves feel smaller, but we gotta shake that up. We gotta value ourselves rather than seeking external validation.
I agree. I think it was Georgia O'Keeffe who said something along the lines of, compliments and criticism go down the same drain,
Yeah.
For Georgia O'Keeffe. And I think that when I heard that, I really identified with that, because I don't actually seek external validation. I don't really care what anyone else thinks about me when they think I'm glorious or where they think I'm a terrible villain, or, all of the many things that I've been accused of just for being an outspoken woman in the public eye. It doesn't really matter to me what anyone who doesn't know me thinks about me. It matters to me what my boyfriend thinks, what my best friends think, what the people I grew up with think. They're the ones who actually know me, who have more of a 360-degree view of who I fundamentally am, not a bunch of strangers on the internet. I think it's sad when I can see my peers care tremendously about what those people think. Because they have a falsified, projection-heavy view of you. They've just projected their own ideals or thoughts or hatred or self-hatred onto you. So I just really don't seek validation very much outside of myself, other than maybe my closer circle, who I use as mirrors. I think it's really important to make sure that you've got people around who check you. It's not like I don't take into consideration anyone's behavior. James is super helpful at telling me when I need to check myself or calm down. But outside of that, it's too exhausting a world, especially as a woman, where people seek to undermine you, seek to misunderstand you, seek to malign you and gaslight you. And, you know, now that we can no longer, you know, to just kill women as easily, we kill their credibility by spreading rumors about them. And we see that with AOC, we see that with Greta Thunberg, we see that with Malala even. Like, you know, it's just, no one is safe from it. No woman is safe from it. And so I've decided to carry on and close my ears to the public and be accountable when I do something wrong, but be very discerning as to whether or not I actually deserve the levels of pylons that I get, or whether it's just laced with misogyny, which more often than not it is.
Yeah, like feeling certain in your conviction and like being able to stand tall, knowing that like you are you and you're going through this life, and you know, if you make mistakes, you learn from them. And I think that's super admirable, and it also sounds really liberating to know the value you offer the world, and I think it comes back to self-worth. And rather than
we also live in a very immediate world. I think, you know, text messages and social media and everything has made us feel like everything's very immediate. We've lost the power to seek out the long term. We've lost the power to seek out, you know, to learn how to zoom out and see the bigger picture. We just focus on the tiny minutiae of like every tiny little detail and end up scrutinizing everything and all of the small things and letting the big things just pass us by. You know, I think we see that a lot on the left. You know, what did they say? The left seek traitors. They're looking for traitors and not converts. You know, I think that's very true of everyone. And so what I think we need to try to do is focus on the bigger picture, on the long term. Like, what are we all trying to achieve here? And I think if you are an individual, in particular a woman or any person who is marginalized, if people don't understand you or like you now, that's okay. Just carry on, because throughout history we have seen that eventually your work will show for itself. My work will speak for itself. My record will speak for itself. People have every right not to trust me now because I'm a privileged celebrity. Like, how many privileged celebrities have actually been true to their word and actually done something to help people? I completely understand any fears around me now. And so I'll just let the record show for it, you know, speak for itself. I think we now look back at Jane Fonda's life and realize, oh shit, she was for real. That wasn't just a publicity stunt. Yeah. And so I'm very comfortable with being doubted now, because I know in my heart my work is genuine. And when we look back, there will be a long-standing record of my integrity.
A little appreciation moment for Jane Fonda. I did not know that much about her life until I dug deep and watched a docuseries, and my mind was blown wide open. And that was a good reminder for myself, even being in this industry, being like, yeah, okay, we see these people in movies and shows, but they have other passions, they have other things that get them excited. And Jane Fonda is such a great example. And you speak about, you know, leaving a legacy and having your work speak for itself. It's doing that now. And I'd love to dive into Iway and the origin story of that, because you talk about taking action, you talk about creating a safe space for people. I mean, this is it. You're freaking doing it. So how did Iway come to be, and why is it such an important part of what you do on a daily basis?
Iway was an accident. I mean, I'd been an advocate for, I don't even remember what year this is now, but since I was 19, I'd been an advocate for eating disorder awareness. And so when I was 19, it was 2018, I think, February 2018, I saw a post on Instagram. I hadn't really ever been on Instagram very much because I found it scary and toxic, but because of the good place, they wanted me to use it more as a promotional tool. So I was on it, I clicked on that little explore button and saw a picture of all of the Kardashian women in a group family photograph, and they had numbers written across their bodies. So I clicked to see what those numbers were, probably because I thought it might be their net worth and I was curious. and it was just how much they weigh. And I was like, that's so sad. Oh. Whatever any of us may think about that family, they are once in a lifetime like phenomenon. And they are extraordinary businesswomen, and they have achieved so many things, and they're being reduced down to a number on a scale after everything they've achieved. That felt extremely hurtful, you know, especially considering the fact that 12-year-old me started starving herself and didn't have a period anymore because of it, because I thought that the most important metric regarding my value would be how much I weigh. And I couldn't believe that 20 years later, I was seeing that very literally be stated. 20 years later, we had made no progress, that it was affirming my childhood fear and belief. So I just got angry and posted what I weigh on the internet, which is I weigh my orgasms and my relationship with my boyfriend and my financial independence and my activism and my friendships. I weigh the sum of all of my parts. And I just posted it on Twitter. I had a very small following at the time, comparatively to now. And it just spread like wildfire. Within 3 days, I had about 10,000 responses. I didn't know what to do with all of them. So I started a little Instagram account that I thought would just be like a nice little museum of all these posts. I didn't expect them to keep coming in. And now we're 3.5 years old. And we have almost 1.5 million followers, high engagement. We have a podcast, a YouTube channel. Like our podcast is very new, and we're about to already hit almost 10 million downloads, apparently. It's just extraordinary. We have been able to change a global policy at Facebook and Instagram together, me and my community at Iway. And I spoke in Congress in 2019, I think, maybe 2020, because it was the pandemic. So last year I spoke in Congress regarding weight stigma in schools. We have 2 other bills that we are trying to get into Congress at the moment. I went and spoke in, I think it was Boston, regarding diet and detox products for under 18s, and also tax incentives for companies that stop photoshopping their images, because we know factually and statistically the harm of digitally altered images on the brains of people who are looking at them. So this has all been because of the Iway movement, because I have an army of 1.5 million people almost behind me. And it's been truly the honor of my life being a part of this.
I mean, 3.5 years and everything you just shared. I mean, how does it feel to be able to say the reach and the impact? And it sounds like there's a massive thirst as well from the community and the world to have something like this in existence.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think people really needed a safe space on the internet. You were just speaking in your last panel about how dangerous social media can be, and how we kind of take a break and how we protect ourselves online. And I think people were just craving a really positive space. We have almost no trolling on our Instagram page, which is unheard of. Just so much love, so much support, everyone learning from each other. And also we've pivoted from just being about eating disorders to now being around all mental health and all advocacy. And we have become a learning platform. I was saying at the beginning that I think it's really important to put more emphasis on trying and learning. And I think currently, especially within the social justice space, people have become exceptionally judgmental and unwelcoming. And so we are a welcoming space that don't care where you're at in your knowledge. We're not going to judge you. We're just so excited that you're here to learn. So if you're a terrified dad who's never learned anything about feminism, or you're a teenager who doesn't know how to explain to your parents that you want to come out as trans, if you need that support system, if you want a podcast to be able to send to your racist grandmother that'll, inform her without you having to do that emotional labor, that's what our community has become. And I think that's why it's so successful, is because it's very, very wholesome and it's non-exploitative. We're very careful and we're accountable when we make mistakes. And I think that makes people feel very heard and seen.
Yeah, especially, right now everyone keeps talking about this cancel culture. But then when we see businesses or platforms or movements like yours take accountability if they make a mistake, I mean, that's a human thing to do. And then to take action to rectify that mistake, to learn, to listen, so that way you don't make that mistake again.
Yeah, 100%. And I really believe in that. I think cancel culture is hugely important, and I think it's a positive thing in that it's the first time the voiceless now have a voice. And I think pre-cancel culture, powerful people were able to just truly get away with sometimes actual murder. And so I think that it was the one weapon the public had, and I understand why they used it. I just think it's new and we don't know how to use it safely or carefully yet, this rule book. And so we just need to refine how we use cancel culture and maybe develop a system of, like a judicial system of what crimes have what value and what crimes deserve what punishments.
I want to go back to Iway for a sec, because you kind of laid it all out on the table. It started off as an accident, then it was a tweet, then it was this massive Instagram account as a museum, and then it exploded further, website, podcast, and then to change policies, to try to change bills. I mean, this is real cut and dry action and impact that is happening. I'd love to learn, what was it that was changed at Facebook and Instagram? Because I think, we all spend so much time scrolling that I think sometimes we forget the alterations that get made, the impact and effect that filters have on us. And it's nice to know, it's comforting to know that there are people fighting the good fight to try to mitigate some of the damage that these have on individuals, especially younger generations.
I mean, I'm working on a multitude of things with Instagram at the moment, and they're incredibly receptive to my feedback. And I think that that's kudos to them, because I'm not annoying, and they tolerate me. But I don't know if anyone's been able to successfully create change without being annoying. And so I've accepted that that's just part of my calling card. But the first one that we were really successful with and really fast, because they'd asked me if I wanted to come in for a meeting because I was blowing up on the platform, and they wanted to kind of partner up with me. And so I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to make some big change. So I started a petition regarding their detox and diet products being just shown without any written side effects, which I thought was out of control, considering any other type of drug, you have to write down all of the side effects. And yet here you were with the Kardashians and all these other famous influencers, all being able to just post the false best things about these diet products and not write down any of the hugely terrifying side effects of a lot of them, because that wouldn't be flattering with their very photoshopped photograph that they have, pretending that this product is why they look the way that they do, rather than all of their plastic surgeons and personal trainers and personal chefs, etc., and all the Photoshop they use. So what was I trying to say? Yes, so we were able to, I got 250,000 signatures in 3 days, took it to the meeting, and then Instagram worked with me and a bunch of other charities to successfully make sure that under 18s wouldn't be shown diet and detox adverts and products. And so that was just a first victory. We're not done, because now we need to create that accountability for all ages, because eating disorders don't just start and stop at 18. But that was a great way to start protecting kids, and that's what led to the beginning of the bill to now actually get these things off the shelves and off the internet for under 18s. So it's just a growing movement to try and protect teenagers. 24,000 teenagers a year are admitted into the emergency room for using diet and detox products. Why isn't that more known? Why don't we know that there's Viagra in muscle gain products that young teenage boys are using, and some girls? Why do we not know that there's speed and laxatives that can damage your digestive system for the rest of your life in these products? What is this emphasis on quick emergency weight loss? How have we panicked people this much about fat? So, that's where some of my work is at the moment.
What was that moment like when you got 250,000 signatures in 3 days, had the ability to walk into that room, share with them, what you'd like to see change, and then to actually have it be well received, and then to take it a step further and to share that not only with your friends and family, but also with your Iway community, who wholeheartedly believe in the mission that you're out there fighting?
Well, it made me feel very proud of the community, because I couldn't have done that on my own. I did that with the 250,000 signatures. And I'm very, very, very aware of that. I'm very aware that I might be the face of this, but I'm certainly not the body. The body is comprised of a lot of much smarter, much more educated and exceptional younger people than me, who really stand with me and who I learned so much from, and I stand with them, not in front of them. And so I just felt very proud of them. But also, I think with anyone in social justice, you just feel like, okay, good, we've done this. Now what? Yeah. There's so much to fix. Last year was so stressful, running Iway and just feeling so helpless, because so many people were in just so much trouble. We had a racial reckoning. We had so many trans people being murdered. We had a global pandemic, so many people in poverty, women being forced to give sexual favors to their landlords to be able to stay in their houses, even though they'd lost their jobs and weren't being given sufficient income, by the government. So I was personally sending those people money, and also trying to find resources, mental health resources. It was very hard to find therapists who were available during that time and couldn't do face-to-face sessions and could only do so many Zooms. It was immensely stressful, and I can't imagine how much more stressful it was for those people who were suffering and in need. But I think as an activist, you feel brief moments of joy and pride, but generally you feel like, okay, what's next?
It's time to get to work. And it sounds like the work will never be done, which is exciting in a way as well, because you can continue to make change and to make progress alongside your amazing community. And I love that you talk about them in such a positive light, that they're a part of it. You might be the face, but they are really the body. And it makes me think of something I read on your site about radical inclusivity. And right now there's a lot of talk about inclusion, but I don't know if I've ever heard of radical inclusivity. And it sounds cool. I like how it rolls off the tongue, but I'd love to learn more about why that's an important pillar of Iway.
Well, the hope is that it's no longer radical soon. It just at the time was radical to have pages glorifying women and people and non-binary people with disabilities, and having their colostomy bags out and a bikini photograph, and having people of all different sizes and colors and ages on our site, writing with us and appearing on our YouTube channels and our podcasts. It just felt like it felt like one of the most diverse spaces online, and I've been thrilled to see an increase in other spaces becoming more and more diverse in the last year and a half. I think the reckoning that we have had has changed things for the better. So I don't know if I would call us radically inclusive anymore. I think we were at the time, but I'm glad to say that now we represent what looks more like the norm.
Yeah, because the world is full of all kinds of individuals. We got to see that in the media.
It's bad for business. It's bad for business to exclude people. Exclusive shouldn't. I'm amazed that the word exclusive has been used as a good, positive word. It's so twisted. Exclusion, like being exclusionary, is only negative and bad. And I think I find that word upsetting and aggravating, and also bad for business. You know, just on a purely logical point of view, when you look at these studios, we had Black Panther, massive success. Crazy Rich Asians, massive success. Bridesmaids, huge, huge, iconic success. Like, how many more reminders do they need that when you include more people who depict what the world actually looks like, then you will bring in customers who look like them, who feel represented by them.
What a wild, groundbreaking statement. Jeez.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous to me that we continue to see all white, like non-disabled, cis, straight casts. Again, it's getting better, but like, for fuck's sake.
Let's go.
Come on.
Let's go. Yeah. This is your call to action. Get better, be better, do better, cast better, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. Obviously, I feel like we just have to throw that out there. It can't just be performative. It can't just be what people see. There's so many people
involved. Just be business.
Yeah.
You know, Gloria Steinem says, who are you going to lunch with? And I think that that's an incredibly important statement. You know, who are you learning from? Who are you spending your time with? Who are you developing empathy for? It's much harder to develop empathy for the people that you shut out of your life. Make your inner circle, make your feed, your timeline, make all of it more diverse. You will only be nourished for it. You will only be better. You will only learn more. You will only feel more connected to more different types of people.
Your passion is infectious. Like, I don't want to bail on you, but like, part of me wants to just get up and like go do something, make the world a better place. But I'm curious, with everything that's already been accomplished with Iway in 3.5 years, if we were to look into a magic 8 ball and see 3.5 years down the line, like, what would be an awesome place for Iway to be at?
I would love for us to make more long form content, like documentaries and maybe even television, that again feels, hopefully not radically, but feels very inclusive. I would like to tell the stories that don't get told. I would like to show disabled stories where we don't make the disabled person the emotional arc for the non-disabled person, where their tragedy and sadness and grumpiness isn't their entire story, where we could just show the mundane and the normal and the happy and the loving and the sexy of people with disabilities. That's something that I feel incredibly passionate about. And I think kind of content like that, showing a fat woman with a thin man and not having fat jokes, be the center of the comedy, and a short man with a tall woman, and not having constant jokes about their height disparity. I would love to just make more content in the world that actually looks like the world.
Oh, a production studio. What?
That would be the dream.
That would be great. I feel like it's doable. I mean, look what you've already accomplished. I feel like you, being the bold, shy person that you are, can literally go out and do it all. I have no doubt.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past myself, honestly. I'm so... I have no chill.
You have no chill, and you're always, it sounds like, very honest. It was really fun prepping for this and reading various interviews you've done. And there were lots of little moments that stuck out, and I was like, I gotta pick which one I want to bring to elevate. But you did this interview for Elle, for Tommy Hilfiger, and you said, we hold the power to shift the dynamic. And, you know, already speaking to you, I feel some awesome power within you. I feel like I'm feeling more powerful as a result. But you were talking about how we hold the power to shift the dynamic. You can choose to interrupt a thought pattern. You can choose what you say out loud. You can choose not to compliment a friend on her weight loss. You can choose not to talk shit about yourself. You can choose not to marinate in self-doubt. Yes, women are conditioned to do all of this, but there is always a choice. How can we reclaim that power? How can we reclaim those choices?
Well, I think the first step would be also getting rid of the things that make choice harder for us, you know, so unfollow the brands and the people that perpetuate those feelings of self-hatred in you, or those feelings of toxicity in you, because we also control the market. Mm-hmm. You know, women in particular, 80% of the market. And so we're 80% of consumers. And that's why we are the most targeted and the most abused by media, because if we feel bad about ourselves, if we feel broken, we will seek out something to fix what we have been told is broken. And so choosing to not buy from those companies that shame us into buying their products, choosing to not follow the magazines that perpetuate those narratives, and the individuals who do so, individuals who, for whatever reason, make you feel like your life or your body or your face or your existence or your age is inferior. Unfollow them. You don't need that in your life. Life is hard enough. We have enough to be afraid of and feel bad about in the world. You don't need to voluntarily put that right in your kind of direct sphere of consciousness via your phone that you're on all day. So really, I refer to it as block, mute, delete, repeat. So first and foremost, protect your space. We hear about self-protection of the body, learn self-defense of the body, but we need to learn self-defense of the mind. And so I think that sense of autonomy begins by shutting out the noise that alters our sense of free will. You know, free will only exists to a point, because we're so, like, it's hard to know what is our actual nature and what is the nurture of our environment. So cut out the environment and start again. And then you will have more ability, without constant reminders of self-hatred, to take back your self-respect. And you know what I was referring to in that Tommy Hilfiger thing, I think in particular, the first part was that words have authority over thought. So you can literally interrupt a thought by speaking out loud and defying that thought. And I think that that's incredibly important.
Wow, yeah, it takes back, it's like a nice tool that we can all have in our back pocket. So next time your thoughts are kind of getting away from you, try speaking something else into existence. I mean,
say no.
Yeah.
Stand up for yourself the way that you would stand up for a friend.
And speaking about standing up, I'd love to hear more about the brick by brick model, and how, for anyone listening who's feeling like they want to take action, just like me sitting in this chair, like, what is the first brick? What is something we can do?
Rachel Cargill was on my podcast. She's an extraordinary activist who everyone should follow. She talks a lot about racial justice. And she said that the word influence has been kind of bastardized and turned into an idea that someone with influence has to have 10,000 plus followers online. She was like, everyone has influence, regardless of whether they're on the internet or not, or how many people they have access to. If you can change the way that one person votes or thinks or treats other people, then you have influence. And so I think that understanding that you don't need to have a large audience in order to make a huge difference, that one vote that you influence could be the vote that changes who gets elected. We all have immense power. And I think it's because we've started to feel like only this section of sort of like activism celebrities and these icons or these people who are being celebrated for that over there, they'll fix it so I don't have to, is why things aren't changing fast enough. We need to recognize that we all have power, and without all of us, no one individual has power. Like I was talking about Iway, I couldn't get any of this done by myself. I have to do it with the thousands and if not hundreds of thousands / millions of people who are behind me, with me, like doing all of this, screaming louder than I ever could. And so it's about taking small steps. First, educate yourself. That's the first brick. Second brick, share that education with the people who need it most. Find them resources. Don't just lecture them. Find them, send them an episode of my podcast on an issue that you feel too exhausted or inequipped to tackle yourself. And then start taking it to supporting other activists online. You don't need to do it. You can support what they're doing. You know, and I think that's something that I've learned over the years, is that I don't need to do everything. I just need to uplift those who are doing it well already. And I've made an effort to do that in the last 2 or 3 years, because I think at first I was just trying to like fix everything by myself, which meant that I was just making mistakes and taking up space and doing more harm than good, probably. So support those already doing the work, fund them, uplift their voices, protect them when they are attacked, believe them when they are attacked. And, you know, as best you can. And just never think that your work is done. That's why I refer to myself as a feminist in progress. I will always be a feminist in progress. And that winds people up because they're like, oh, she said she's always learning. It's like, yes, that's right. I'm always learning. I'm always learning. Information is always going to update. And I'm never going to be an arrogant enough prick to think that I know it all.
Also, when did learning become a bad thing? Like how, I feel like...
I think like 7 years ago. As you're not supposed to learn, you're supposed to just be omniscient and well-read, and you have to have a collegiate understanding of the nuances of every part of social justice. Otherwise, your help really doesn't seem like it's wanted, and that has got to change because your help is wanted and desperately needed. We need to go after converts. We need to stop just seeking out traitors.
Yeah. And I feel like I could talk to you forever about all this stuff, but I'd love to end on this idea of blue check responsibility, which is something you've talked about. And I mean, you are, yes, a celebrity. Yes, you've got that blue check. Yes, you've got a massive platform, but you're also super fucking outspoken. You're an activist. You are open to progress over perfection. Not all celebrities are like that. Do you feel that people with big platforms, celebrities, should be outspoken?
I do. I understand why they're not, because you get given so much of a harder time than the people who don't do anything and don't try to help anyone. This is, again, the seeking traitors, not converts. Like, we punish those who try and we celebrate those who don't even get involved. And I think that that is a massive mistake, because then we're just discouraging all the people with the money and the influence and the power to actually make a difference. And so I think that that's a shame. I do understand why more celebrities don't speak out, but I wish they would anyway, because it really doesn't matter if people make fun of you or disapprove of you or think that you're a liar or a disingenuous virtue signaling, you know, bore. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that we scrap in, we're willing to own up to our mistakes, we're willing to be vulnerable, and we just do it anyway. We just help anyway. I have not been prepared for any single thing I think I have ever done in my entire life. But I've managed to make a difference by just scrapping in and learning on the job. And yes, I've gotten criticized. Yes, I've been embarrassed. Yes, I've had to be called in and called out. But it was worth it for the fact that in doing so, I stuck around and made so much change and changed the lives of tens of thousands of people who message me every day to say that I've changed their life. So I'm so glad I didn't wait until I was perfectly qualified to get stuck in and make a difference. And I think that we need a little bit more encouragement to do so.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I think there's this going back to this idea of fear. There's so much fear out there that you might get belittled or canceled or quieted or attacked if you do speak up. But I don't think that's reason enough to not speak up. Like, you have a seat at the table. Come and sit.
Yeah. Yep, 100%. So, like I said, I understand the reticence, but I don't think it's enough of an excuse.
Yeah. And just to end on, because this day is all about well-being, what does well-being mean to you now? You've obviously gone through quite a roller coaster ride to get to where you are now. I'm sure that roller coaster is not anywhere near finished, because such is life. But what is well-being to you, and why is it important?
I'm just about to start in the Marvel universe. You mean like, what do I do to practice my own self-care?
Yeah, like let's just end on some fun little insider tips and tricks.
I play with my puppy dog. That is not a euphemism. He's a real dog. He's a doodle. I play with him and walk him all the time, and he's incredibly pure and unaware of the internet or what I do for a living. I spend a lot of time with my wonderful boyfriend, and we have such an incredible relationship, and I feel so lucky for that. And we're going on 6 or 7 years. I don't remember how long we've been together. And I live with all of my best friends in my house, all of whom I've known since I was a teenager. So they keep me very grounded when the world becomes too much. And I occasionally have therapy if I need it. I do EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. It's incredible for PTSD if that's something that you need. And I just have excellent friends, and I just do everything I can to support them and hope that they'll stick around, because they're the best part of my life. And then the rest of my time is really genuinely enjoying my work at Iway. It's not without its stress, but it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your insights, doing the work that you do, fighting the good fight, and creating a space where everyone can join and have a seat at the table so they can feel empowered to make change. You're amazing. I feel so lucky to be doing this virtual interview with you, especially on a day all about well-being. So really, truly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All right, lots of love. Bye.